Hey everyone, how's it going? Sarah here, and today what I wanted to do was to make a tier list for the best evolutions, or the whole evolution lines in Champion TCG. So we have already done a video going over the best cards in set 1 and the best cards in set 2 as a tier list. And now we're just gonna go ahead and we're gonna do it for just evolution lines as a whole. And I believe we have all of the cards on here, but I'm not entirely sure it loaded them all properly. Hopefully it did. I already see one of the cards seems like the Dreadfin is hiding somewhere. I don't know if it's like not here. Oh, it's over here. It's in this corner. So I think some of them are out of order. But we'll go over all of these, and we'll see what we got going on. So let's take a look at the Flamey line to start things off. I think the Flamey line is probably like tippity top tier. It doesn't get much better than this. We're gonna put Flamey in S tier for sure. I mean, at 2 mana, Flamey is excellent. At 4 mana, you're still perfectly happy to pay 4 mana for that Inferno effect. And the same is the case for this 5 mana. Like, you're happy to pay the full mana cost for each of these cards, and they're like really well statted too. Flamey Guacan being a 5 mana 8/8, now obviously it's going to take some damage, but as an 8 health unit, it's going to survive Inferno the large majority of the time. And even for Flamer Eye is going to live 50% of the time. You're perfectly happy paying the cost for all of these cards. These are excellent cards. Often they're going to be 2 or 3 for 1s in a lot of games. Excellent evolution line, one of the best in the game, for sure. Let's take a look at Dreadfin next. Oh, that's so weird. Oh, yeah, I see what's going on here. We'll take a look at the Dreadfin next. So we have Dreadfin, Necrofish, and Soul Swimmer. Now for these three, I think these are significantly weaker than Flamey and Flamey Guacan. I would say these guys are probably somewhere in the D tier or the B tier. Dreadfin is like okay for a 2 cost. It's a little understated. I feel like it could have a little bit more points. But that Vortex for 2 mana is a fairly good deal. 2 mana for 2 Vortex is fairly decent. It does get traded on by Speedy pretty hard. The issue becomes it's a bit harder to justify, I feel like, playing Necrofish and Soul Swimmer. Soul Swimmer especially, I think, is just... Vortex is the type of mechanic that you want to play multiple copies of for as cheap as possible. Whereas Soul Swimmer being 5 mana, like, sure, you get a 9/7 body, that's pretty good. But the card itself, like, isn't a great deal. I think Dreadfin and Necrofish are, like, okay. But the Soul Swimmer is just so hard to get into play through evolution that I would say that this is a B-ranked evolution line. Next we have... Should we do this in... we're just going to do this in the order that they're here, because otherwise we're going to be jumping back and forth. So we have the Eagleon evolution here. Eagleon and Griffeon. I would say these two are an A-tier evolution. I think Eagleon is an S-tier card. I think Griffeon is more like a B-tier card. But the evolution of the two, very often because of the way Eagleon works, it's so cheap it creates such cheap tempo swings that often your opponent isn't able to kill the Eagleon once it hits play, unless they have like an Earthquake. But if they don't have an Earthquake, often the Eagleon is going to live, making it an excellent evolution target for Griffeon. I think often you'll be able to get that evolution going, especially with like a Shadow Steel going, something like that. So I think these guys definitely go somewhere in A. Next we have the Artipaw, which would be somewhere over here. Yeah, right over here. 3 mana 4/3 Rush, evolves into 5 mana 6/5 Blizzard, which evolves into 6 mana 8/8 Blizzard. So Artipaw, we already in Ice you get a 2 mana 4/3 Rush, so Artipaw is overcosted. Artifang is basically the same thing. Ice Eagle is just straight up the same card as Artifang, except it's just 1 mana cheaper. The same is true for Artipaw and the Snowbeak. So then the last question becomes Artiking. 6 mana 8/8 Blizzard, 6 mana 8/8 Blizzard is decent. But you have to consider the fact that you are contending against cards like Crystalia, and you're also contending against cards like Cryo Slice over here. And once you start considering those two cards, I think the Artipaw line becomes really hard to ever justify playing. I think this is a D tier evolution. Maybe you can argue that it's like C tier, but I'm just going to go ahead and put it in D tier. I don't see any reason you would ever want to play these cards when you could just play Snowbeak. With that said, let's take a look at Oculi. We have him right here. Now, Oculi is a 2-mana 3/1 with no effect. Evolves into a 3-mana 5/2 with Psybeam. I mean, I guess 3-mana 5/2 Psybeam is okay. But, like, it's not good. Realistically, it's not good. I would go ahead and put this in D tier as well. And maybe you can argue that, like, Artipaw is, like, a tier above Oculi, but we're just going to put them all in D tier for here. The next one we have on the list is going to be the Lycanite, which evolves into Moonfang. Both these are understated and have no effect. So Lycanite, 2-mana 2/2 nothing, into Moonfang, which is a 4-mana 4/5 with no ability. I don't know if you guys know this, but Cutiebug is a 2-mana 4/5 with upside. So I am not interested at all in playing either of these two cards. These cards are terrible, straight up. Nothing else to say. And I think you can do the same for Kitnix and Catnix. We're not even going to get too detailed. These are just terrible. They're not ever worth considering playing. Fondra and Radaria, 3-mana 3/3 Bless and 5-mana 5/5 Bless. So really these are like 3-mana 6/3 Bless and 5-mana 8/5 Bless with upside, because you can put the Bless on something else and get some additional value. I suppose these are better than Artipaw and Artifang, but really they're not, because like the Lumino, and Luminix exists, and because those cards exist, I think these cards are just unplayable. I don't see why you would ever play them. I'll put them higher. They're probably at the top of D tier, but like they're not good. You know what I mean? So next we have the Unicorn. I forget the Unicorn's name. I also forget where. Oh, here we go. Pegasi and Pegasol. As far as an evolution line goes, so Pegasi is just Munta. It's a light version of Munta, and Pegasol is actually like pretty decent top end. I think it's pretty decent top end. I think you could say that these are B tier. These cards are, Pegasi and Pegasol is like actually solid. Like Pegasi, Munta in general is like, sure, Munta isn't as good as like most of the other 4-mana rushes, but it's still a 4-mana rush. Like 4-mana rush of cards are good. Having the 11 points of stats on a 4-mana rush is just solid. And the big thing about Pegasi is it's a 4-mana rush that evolves into another rush unit, which we really don't get many of those. The only other rush unit that evolves into a rush unit that I could think of is Monkey and Uga Chief, which we're going to get to later, which will 100% be S tier at the top. But I think, dude, you could even make an argument that this is A tier. I'm going to put it in B tier, but I think you could argue that this is A tier, for sure. We have Joyfei and Joybell. These two are just no effects. They go into D tier. There's just nothing to say about that. The Piggy Banks as well. I'm trying to find them here, but they're also just, it's a 1-mana 1/1 that evolves into, oh, here we go. 1-mana 1/1 evolves into a 1-mana 1/2, which evolves into a 1-mana 1/3. These cards are awful, and that's where they'll go. Pumpkaboo, I think, should be near the top. Oh, it's not Pumpkaboo. I think Pumpkaboo is a Pokemon. Boo Boo we have, which evolves into Fanboo and Phantom. So Boo Boo is a 1-mana 1/2 with Psybeam, which is actually like fairly efficient for a Psybeam card. I think all of these cards are actually fairly efficient. I find Psybeam to be one of the hardest cards and one of the hardest effects in the game to really evaluate properly, because it's such a situationally powerful effect. I generally stay away from using Psybeam type cards, but I have seen them used to like fairly good effect in the past. As for these guys, I think C tier. Like, I don't ever see when you would be in a world where like you're evolving these like that. But I guess it belongs in C tier because it doesn't deserve to be in D tier. It's better than the D tier stuff. And then let's see. We have up next. I wish these loaded in order, but we have Lion and Imperious. So Lion is a 3-mana 3/5, which evolves into a 6-mana 7/9. You're never gonna play 6-mana 7/9 in a world with Whirlwinds. These cards are basically only good if they come off of an egg. If they don't come off of an egg, you're never gonna be playing it. We'll put them somewhere in D tier, near the top. They're not as bad as some of the other D tier cards, but they're still not crazy. Now, Pandorable and Panthu. I think these guys are solidly A tier. You could maybe argue they're S tier. I'm going to say they're A tier. They're both great. Pandorable being a 1-mana, basically a 1/6. On turn 1, this card is very hard to kill. And on turn 2, you can evolve it directly into Panthu, which, just getting an early 6/10 in play, or just like a 6/6 and you put the Life Bloom somewhere else. The Panthu is really powerful if you can evolve it off the Pandorable. So I think this card is excellent. I think the evolution line in general is excellent. The main issue with Pandorable and Panthu is that Panthu gets Whirlwinded really badly. And since it's 6 mana, you're basically never going to be able to play it. It's really hard to play out a 6 mana, 6/10 card. Even though the stats are so good, it's just so vulnerable to Whirlwind. It's so vulnerable to like Freeze and Combustion and Inferno that I feel like it's really hard to ever play this card more than once unless you're like evolving it in most games. There's just not enough time to play it. So I think because the Panthu is a little clunky, it holds them back. I think they're like almost S tier, but I think because they're just slightly clunky, it does hold them back a little bit. Voodoo and Voodala, I'm not even going to look for them too much. I don't see them. These guys are D tier. These are just, they have no effect. I'm not going to go out of my way to try to find these guys. The Guaincess, the Guais and the Guaqueen. 3-mana 4/4 with Bless evolves into 6-mana 8/8 with Bless. I will say these guys are C tier. These are significantly worse than the Guaincess and the Guaking. I would love the art. This card has... The Guais has some of my favorite art in the entire game. But unfortunately, this is a evolution tier list, not a how much do I like the art on these cards tier lists. And for that reason, Guais will make its way into C tier. It is better than these D tier cards that don't really have much effect. But that is about it. Maybe I should just be putting these like none guys at the bottom and like these guys can go over here. But like the thing is Guais is like straight up better than these. So I feel like they belong down here. Maybe you can argue this one is here. Like this. I don't know. I'm not going to go too crazy about these low tier cards. I don't think it's worth stressing. Now, Grima and Grimblade, 4-mana 4/5 guard. And Grimblade being a 5-mana 6/8 guard. Grimblade is like almost a decent card, but it's really not a decent card. And then Grima is just bad. So I'm going to say these are D tier. Like, again, maybe you can argue it's like C tier. I don't know. I feel like D tier is getting a little big already. But there's a lot of bad evolutions as well. Like, I don't know. We'll put this one here, I guess. This is like... Yeah, we'll put it there. I'm not going to get too crazy about those. Hydrofang. Hydrofang, Serpentide, and Abyssalisk. Hydrofang, I believe, made it to S tier in our last, in our set 1 tier list. Serpentide, however, Hydrofang evolving into Serpentide is excellent. These two cards are a very powerful evolution line. The issue is, like we talked about Necrofish and Soul Swimmer, they're hard to evolve. They're slow. Now, Serpentide is easier to evolve out of Hydrofang, for sure. I think you're much more likely to evolve a Hydrofang into Serpentide than you ever are to evolve a Dreadfin into a Necrofish. The issue is Abyssalisk. Abyssalisk being a 9-mana 9/8, this card is abysmal. Pun unintended, actually. That's pretty funny. This card is just so expensive, so heavy, you're never going to play it. You basically can only get this card into play by evolving Serpentide, which is just not going to happen very often, realistically. So I think Abyssalisk really holds the evolution line back. I'm going to say they're high beat. Oh, but the thing is it's got to be a higher tier than the Dreadfin, right? Like, I don't feel like it deserves to be an A tier, though. I don't think this evolution line deserves to be an A tier. So maybe we make this the cutoff, like here. I think that makes a little bit of sense. Yeah, I think Hydrofang into Serpentide, there is merit to this, because Hydrofang itself is just such a powerful card that it's often gonna stick around. I mean, maybe it isn't even gonna stick around a lot. Like, it's gonna, because it pressures so much damage that your opponent has to kill it right away, especially for 2 mana. But if it's allowed to stick, it's going to be a huge issue, and being able to evolve it into Serpentide is big business. Just the Abyssalisk is just... You would never want to actually play Abyssalisk, basically. Scorchwing, on the other hand. Scorchwing, Dracoferno, and Crematorius. I'm going to put this in S tier. With the caveat, similar to Abyssalisk, you're never going to want the 9-mana one. You know, actually, we're going to put it... Oh, it's got to be S tier, dude. Like, the Scorchwing itself is so strong. And, like, Dracoferno is good enough. I'll put it... Oh, dude, it's so tricky, because Scorchwing is better. Scorchwing is better than the, than Flamey. But this is an evolution line video. And I guess because we're just rating it by the evolution line, I guess the Scorchwing evolution line is weaker. Even though Scorchwing is stronger than Flamey, Dracoferno is weaker than the Guaking, or not Guaking. It's weaker than the Flamerai and the Flamey Guakin. And Crematorius is just unplayable. You're never going to want to cast this card. So I guess we can say A tier. I feel like a little wrong putting this in A tier. I feel like it does deserve to be S, but we're going to put it here just for the sake of, like, I want it to be clear that the Flamey evolution line, the line as a whole, not the individual cards, the evolution line as a whole, Flamey is better. Now let's see, what do we have next? We have Fungu, Terrorcap, and Doomish. These cards are dog, so they go here, where they belong. Next we have, going over to Snowbeak, Ice Eagle, and Frostwing evolution line. The Snowbeak, Frostwing, Ice Eagle evolution line, I used to be super bullish on. When I first started this game, I thought this evolution line was, like, the best. After playing a bit longer, I believe it's gotten a bit weaker in my mind. Snowbeak, when compared to the Nature Rush cards, so like Monkey, it's strictly worse than Monkey. And when you compare it to Speedy, Snowbeak gets traded on very well by Speedy. Speedy will live as a 3/1 on the same mana cost. So because of that, Snowbeak is a bit weaker in my mind. However, Snowbeak has the benefit of evolving into Ice Eagle, which realistically, you don't evolve Snowbeak into Ice Eagle super often. Oftentimes, you'll end up playing Ice Eagle, and then you'll play a Snowbeak on the same turn, so that they can attack together. But the evolution line is still very synergistic with each other. And then the final evolution, Frostwing, you'll often be able to evolve Ice Eagle into a Frostwing, actually. Because Ice Eagle because it's able to Blizzard something down, usually you'll be playing it when you have control of the board. So your opponent basically has to trade 1-for-1 with it with an Ocho type card. or they can play an Inferno, or they can play a Combustion, or they can freeze your Icicle back, is usually how they're going to answer the Icicle. But if they can't answer the Icicle, you'll be able to evolve it into Frostwing, which is a very high value evolution. The problem is Frostwing is incredibly vulnerable to Whirlwind. And now, since we're playing a lot more Gen 1 formats, like Gen 1, Gen 2 formats, I think it's harder to justify Frostwing at the moment. But that's not to say Frostwing is bad. So I think we're going to put this evolution in A tier. I think A tier is pretty reasonable for these guys. Tedderock, Stonefur, and Moss Grizzle. Now, Tedderock is really bad. This card is basically... You would never really want to play this card, I don't think. Stonefur, I mean... Maybe you could, like, say that, like... Maybe you could justify playing Tedderock in, like, a 1 or 2 element format where, like, you just need a 2-drop and, like, Tedderock gets the job done there. Basically, really, Stonefur is the only good one in this evolution line. Stonefur holds the whole evolution line together. I have evolved Stonefur into Moss Grizzle quite a few times. And it's cool. It's cool to evolve Stonefur into Moss Grizzle. Realistically, it gets whirlwinded. Not a great deal. Yeah. So Stonefur is a house. This card is like S tier, A tier. The other two, fairly weak. I will put this evolution line in B tier. I think B tier seems pretty fair to these guys. Maybe like over here. Thunderpurr, Sparkmane, and Shockclaw. Currently Zap sucks. The way this mechanic works is it's just far too inconsistent. Basic, like all these cards, Thunderpurr, Sparkmane, and Shockclaw, or at least Thunderpurr and Sparkmane, they get like traded on by cards on the same mana cost extremely efficiently, so they don't generate much real value. And then Shockclaw is just too expensive to play normally and doesn't do enough. So I would say these guys are like C tier. We'll put them over this guy over here, but they're not very good. Now, who do we have next? We have Babat and Scaregoat as an evolution line. And this... I want to say these are like D tier or C tier. But like... I feel like Babat and evolving into Scaregoat is such an interesting evolution. And I feel like putting it in C tier just does it such a disservice. So I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to put them in B tier. Even though I don't really think at this current time, I don't think this evolution line deserves to be in B tier. But I can't help shake the feeling that there is some kind of untapped potential in Babat evolving into Scaregoat. In some kind of deck that just doesn't exist yet. And maybe I'm completely wrong. I might be completely wrong. But in my mind, the idea of being able to play like a Zoo-style deck where your 1-drop can evolve into a Retribution unit, I feel like that's gotta be juice. But I don't know how to like make it work. And maybe this is like an archetype that'll exist later, or maybe this is an archetype that'll just never exist. And I'm just wrong about Babat. But I can't shake the feeling that there's some kind of untapped potential in these two cards. And for that reason, I'll go out on a limb. We'll say they're B tier. And I want to believe that it's better, but I can't justify it, dude. I'm already, like, pushing it by putting it in B tier, I feel like. Shadgeist and Reapergeist, I mean, these guys suck. We'll put them in bottom of C tier, because they're better than these. I mean, like, if you live the dream and you get to play Shadgeist and evolve it into Reapergeist, it's awesome, and then you still get, like, Whirlwinded. So it's like you're working so hard to not... You're, like, playing two cards that are, like, bricks, but, like, sort of cracked together. But, like, even when they are played together, they're not that cracked. So, yeah, we'll just put them here. I love the art. Shadgeist and Reapergeist has some crazy art. Let me see if I can zoom in on that real quick. Whatever. I'm not going to worry about it that much. You'll see the art on... You can go see the art on your own. Speedy evolving into Smacky. Let's see, where is Speedy and Smacky? I mean, surely you guys know what Speedy and Smacky does. Here they go. Here they are. Speedy and Smacky. Excuse me. Speedy is excellent. Speedy is one of the best 2-drops in the game. Smacky, however, not so much. Smacky is really weak. I have evolved the Speedy into a Smacky on a couple occasions. It's cool, but it still gets whirlwinded. And that's the issue with like these kind of heavy cards that like aren't good on their own. These evolutions that like get carried by the previous level of the evolution. Since they struggle on their own, they're not really worth their full mana cost. So because of that, they like really rely on being evolved into play. And cards that like kind of need that, like you're not guaranteed that you're gonna be allowed to evolve your Speedy in a particular game, and then the card still needs to line up. Like you need to draw it in the correct time. So I'm gonna say that these guys are. I'm gonna say B tier. I don't think they belong in C tier. I think they're pretty all right. Amy, Whammy, and Bammy. This evolution line gets really carried by Amy. I really basically never see people play Whammy and Bammy. I don't think they're very good. But I think Amy is so good. But it's like, I'm going to put these in C. I might be wrong. I might be undervaluing it. Because Amy itself is such a strong card that like maybe it like bumps the rest of the evolution line up to B. But really, Bammy is not a good card. 6 mana for a 7/7 curse. Like, if you have the time to play this, like, kudos to you. And then it's gonna get whirlwinded. And like, sure, you can reuse the curse if it gets whirlwinded, but you just spent 6 mana to give something -2/-2. It's just such a tempo disadvantage, such a loss of tempo. And then Whammy, the issue with Whammy is that the 4 mana rushes will just trade over it. And then sure, like, the 4 mana rush will trade over and live with 1 life, so you can curse them again, but you still need a second curse in your hand. And then on top of it, like, even though Amy is excellent, it's only got 2 life. It's so rarely gonna get to evolve into Whammy and Bammy, and even when it does, it's like situationally good. I don't think they're particularly worth it. I think C tier is okay for them. Frossetty and Glacetti. I think these guys go into the B tier. Maybe even A tier, honestly. Maybe even A tier. Do these guys deserve to be in A tier? That's a tough call. Is this evolution line... Like, this evolution line is on a similar power level to... Is that even true, though? I was going to say they're on a similar power level to Snowbeak and Ice Eagle and all them. But I'm not entirely sure that's true. I'm going to put them in B tier. I think, because here's the thing. Here's the reason why they're a tier below Snowbeak. Snowbeak on its own is very good. Ice Eagle on its own is very good. The Frossetty... Or which is which? Is the Frossetty the baby? Yeah, the Frossetty is the baby. The Frossetty is like... It's good. But I feel like... If you were to compare at face value the Frossetty to the Ice Eagle, I think the Ice Eagle is just way better. The only difference is that the Frossetty is more mana efficient, but you get it's cheaper to play, but the body you get is significantly worse. For the difference of 1 mana, you get +3/+1, which is worth more than 1 mana, I believe. And then on top of it, like, the Ice Eagle going up to 5 life is really relevant compared to 4 life. Like, the Ice Eagle won't get traded on by a monkey. It won't get killed by a retribution. Whereas I feel like the Frossetty is very vulnerable. And the main reason you play it is because it can evolve into the Glacetti. I think that's like the real juice about these two cards. I feel like that Frossetty into Glacetti evolution line is like really good tempo, but then you still end up in the same position where like, whoops, I got whirlwinded, and it's like it sucks. So like maybe you can argue there could be an argument that these both deserve A tier, but I'm gonna go ahead and just put this in B tier. I think it's reasonable. Like there's no way that like Frossetti's on the same power level as Scorchwing, right? Like that's kind of where my head's at. And I feel like maybe you can argue that like Snowbeak is on the same power level. Maybe even I'll lower it a little bit. So here, we'll lower it so that they're right next to each other. They're pretty close. Surphowl and Surpup. These guys are pretty garbage. I will go ahead and put them in the C tier. Surpup being a 2-mana 2/2 is like trash. It's like not good. And then Surphowl being a 3-mana 4/3, it's like also not good. I feel like these should have another evolution, like a bigger evolution, like even if it goes into like a 4-mana 6/6, I feel like that could have been cool. I feel like there's something missing from this evolution line that's just not here. And then on top of it, like first of all, these cards are just I don't want to dig too deep into this. These guys are bad. It's like I'm not going to talk an hour and a half about these cards. Chunka and Chunko. Chunko is a 4-mana 3/6, gets absolutely demolished by any of the 4-mana 6-power rush units. So, and then Chunka is your late game, extremely expensive, thick unit that dies to Whirlwind, that dies to Hydroblast, that dies to Blizzard. Card sucks. Like, these guys are just trash. This is like one of the few cards that has text on it that I still believe belongs in D tier. It's just so bad. It just doesn't do anything. And then we have Coralfin. Coralfin will evolve into Reefback. And the reality is this evolution line is garbage because Jelly and Jello exist. And why would you ever play a 3-mana 2/2 with Hydroblast when you can play a 2-mana 4/4 with Hydroblast? Additionally, it evolves into a 4-mana 6/5 with Hydroblast when the Reeferback evolves into a 6-mana 4/8. So it's got less power. It's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. E tier. Peba. Where's your boy Peba? I love this guy. So Peba is trash. But if you ignore Peba and pretend that the other two cards don't exist, and you just look at Raka and Stona. Stona is excellent. Stona, like, hard carries this evolution line. And then, like, Stona is, like... Because it's a 2/4, you can play on the same turn. You can play Stona and another Earthquake. And Stona being 3 mana is cheap enough to be played alongside another Earthquake. And also, since it has 4 life, it's always going to survive an Earthquake. So you can do double Earthquake turns with your Stona and have decent odds of Stona living to the next turn and evolving into Raka, because oftentimes your opponent won't want to commit a good card. They won't want to commit one of their fast effects to deal with a 2/2 or a 2/1. So it kind of like, it forks them into like, they either play into the Stona evolution or they have to deal with the Stona, which they don't want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and say Stona is A tier. And I'd say like, excuse me. I would say high A tier at that. I think it's really good. Like, I know we said we're going to look at these from the entire evolution line, but you can just pretend Peba doesn't exist and just play Stona Raka, and these cards are excellent. And just forget Peba was ever even a card. I'm going to make an exception for this one. I don't think Peba holds Stona and Raka back. You know what I mean? Like, it would be great if Peba did something and you can play all 3, but it doesn't hold it back. It doesn't hold back the rest of the evolution line, Stona and Raka just being solid. So next we have, where are they? We have Byron and Ignisteel. Put those at the top of S tier, because they're either the best cards in the game, or they're the worst cards in the game. And there's no in between. this combustion mechanic is cracked, and being able to play Fire On and kill their best thing and develop a 4/4, and then the next turn do it again, pretty cracked. Like, it's just insane. Absolutely insane. And then after that, we have Shadow Steel and Obsidian. I'm putting this at the top of S tier. I think this is the best evolution line of the game, quite possibly. Is that true? Are they the best evolution line? They might be. It's so good, dude. It's so good. Because here's the thing, is like all these other cards, like we're talking about like evolutions, right? All these other cards, you need to draw the card it evolves into. Shadow Steel fixes all of that. Shadow Steel always searches itself, or it always searches what you need. It's playing by like different rules compared to all the other evolution cards. It's like, it's actually crazy how good this card is. So yeah, solid S tier for sure. Digga and Digleyfur. Dude. I'm putting these at the top of B tier. I want to put them in A tier. Every time I play a deck with Digga in it, I freaking love this card, bro. I am like always so impressed by how good Digga and Digleyfur are. But I don't know, dude. I think I can't, like, there's a limit, right? Like, I can't just, there's gotta be some kind of limit. Yeah. I'll put them in B, but like, these guys are slept on, bro. I'm telling you, these guys are slept on. Every time I play Digga, I'm impressed with the card. That's all I have to say. There have been very few times in my life I have played a 1 mana 2/13 and been sad. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so efficient. There's no card in the game that is more efficient than Digga. And the problem is it's just really hard to evolve the Digga into the Digleyfur comfortably. And sometimes they're like a little situational. Dude, these guys might be A tier. I'm putting them in A tier. I don't care. Sue me. I love this card, dude. Dude, it's gotta be B tier. This is killing me, dude. I know it doesn't deserve to be an A tier, but like, I feel like it does deserve to be an A tier because I'm just so impressed every time I play it. And then it's got so much health that like, you do get to evolve it sometimes. And then it'll survive earthquakes. They both survive earthquakes. Dude, it's just like, oh, this card is so good though. I'm gonna put it in A. It doesn't deserve A. I'm sorry. It doesn't deserve A. It does though, but it doesn't. Let's keep going. Grumble and Grimzilla. And just let it be known how much, out of all of the other things that we've listed, this is the one that's pained me the most. I just want that to be clear. Grumble and Grimzilla. Easy A tier, if not S tier. Grumble is incredibly resilient. Grumble is one of the best 2-drops in the game. Grumble itself is incredibly resilient, one of the best 2-drops in the game, and it evolves into Grimzilla. And the thing about Grimzilla, 6 mana, 6/8 is not something you're necessarily happy hard casting. You're not excited to ever play Grimzilla for its full cost. It's definitely, like, this card is like more of like a 5 mana card. But Grimzilla is basically one of the only evolution cards in the game that when you evolve it, it's not weak to Whirlwind, it's not weak to Hydroblast, because it has Guard. It'll ignore both of those. So it's like, it's one of the few top-end cards in the game that like isn't scared of the cards that counter top-end cards. It can't be combustioned. It very rarely will die to Inferno. So, and then on top of it, the Grumble needs 2 hits. It's so resilient that I think it does deserve to be S tier, actually. The only issue with this evolution line is Grumble is Grumble is weak to Curse, and it's like kind of sort of weak to Earthquake, but not really. Not really, but it will die to like Earthquake plus Trade or something like that, right? Like, or Trade plus Earthquake, I guess would be the order. Like Grumble does get stopped But like Grumble itself is just an S tier card, and then being able to evolve into Grimzilla, I do think this is one of the best evolutions in the game. Let's see, who do we have next? Pyta? 2/2 guard, just get this trash out of here. Go straight in the bin where it belongs. Shadowfang and Darkstalker. I've seen people use these cards. I myself would never use these cards. Darkstalker is actually like, I mean, like, they're both like fairly efficient on the mana cost. And then, like, let's say Shadowfang flips something and gets 2 points of stats, and it's like a 4/6. Like, that's pretty big, I guess, for 3 mana, a 4/6. But like, if you're getting value out of the Shadowfang, it like could be good. It's just it's a tough sell, I think. I think these Psybeam cards are just so unreliable that I don't rate them that high. But I feel like out of all of these Psybeam curse cards, the Shadowfang Darkstalker is probably one of the better ones. I would say they're C tier. Somewhere around here. I just don't see what world they see a ton of play in. Nippa into Barry. I think that's probably an A tier evolution. Barry, so Nippa and Barry are both really good aggressive cards. The issue with Nippa and Barry is they're both understated by 1 point, pretty much, is the moral of the story. Nippa gets absolutely demolished by, this is the real crux of the issue, is Nippa gets demolished by a lot of the 2 mana cards in the game. Snowbeak will trade with it, Speedy will kill it and live, what's his name, Grumble will trade into it and live, Monkey will trade into it and live. So many 2-drops will trade into it and immediately generate a tempo advantage. And as an aggro deck that's looking to play cards like Nippa, you really can't afford to lose the board on turn 2. So that really holds Nippa back. And then Barry just being a 6/5, like, for 4 mana rush, you're supposed to be getting a 6/6. Like, you'd prefer to get a 6/6, but I am willing to look the other way for Barry because it evolves from a 2-drop that is also aggressive. So the two cards, Nippa and Barry, they're both like-minded in the fact that they both want to be very aggressive. And I think they both fit in an aggro deck shell really well together. So I think they belong in A tier, but maybe you can say that they belong in B tier. But I do think you can say they're A tier. Next we got Grease. 2 mana, 3/2 provoke, evolves into Tar Beast. 6 mana, 6/5 provoke. Just absolute dumpster. Put it where it belongs. Walla, 3 mana, 3/3 Hydroblast. I love the art on this card, but it's just not very good when you can compare it to Jelly, for instance, right? Like, Jelly is just, and it's a confused evolution line, bro. It evolves into like Wagician, but the Wagician, like, it's 7 mana, dude. Like, 7 mana for a Greed, like, if you have the time to play a 7 mana Greed, like, more power to you, bro. Like, I don't know how you get the time to play that kind of card. I'll say they're at the bottom of C tier just because I don't think they belong in D tier. I think Hydroblast and Wagician are, like, interesting enough, or Hydroblast and Greed are, like, good enough that they don't deserve to be in D tier. This is a... So the way you would ever get into a format where Walla and Wagician both see play is it's a very greedy format, obviously. It's a, and because the card says greed on it, but like, it's a world where Walla is consistently activating and being able to stick and play. And in that kind of world where you're consistently using Walla to kill something and then you can like greed up the turn after, that could actually be really good. The issue is it's so contextual, and let me just gather my thoughts. It's so contextual, and it's it's like a limited time thing, right? Because if the format ever gets into a position where like Walla and Whale-Magician are good, that means the whole world is playing expensive units, or not expensive units. The whole world is playing units that die to Hydroblast, right? And if the whole world is playing cards that die to Hydroblast, well then, and then to the point where Walla and Whale-Magician are like actually seeing play, then the format and the metagame would just move away from those 8 health units into playing cheaper things that won't die. If that makes sense. But dude, I like... It's a funny concept. Like, it would be so cool to see like a Life Bloom Walla Whale-Magician deck, but I just don't see how that would make sense. I like that the Whale-Magician can like recoup card advantage, but we've talked enough about this card. I think we'll put it in C tier. We'll bump him up. He's better than Shadgeist. He's better than Boo Boo. There we go. Who do we have next? We have Mechwing. Mechwing, who evolves into Steel Feather. This is an A tier evolution for sure. Maybe even S tier, but I will put him an A tier, at the top of A tier. This is a great evolution. 3 mana, 3/6 is really beefy. And since it whirlwinds, you're generally going to often have the board. Now, Mechwing is very weak to the 4 mana rush cards. It will die to most of them. But if they don't have that rush card, and you do get to evolve Steel Feather, Steel Feather is the strongest enabler card in the game, I think. It's like, it's a combo extender. And I know, like, Steel Feather is, like, basically the same as Shadow Steel. But in the way that it can extend combos. But I can't explain why. But I feel like they play a little different from each other, even though they both have this Windseek type thing. I find anytime I'm able to evolve a Steel Feather, I'm often able to evolve, like, 2 more cards along with it if I want to. It feels less like a card in ChampionsTCG to me, and it feels more like a Yu-Gi-Oh card in that it just allows you to cheat. It allows you to just go into these crazy turns where you, like, get multiple evolutions in a way that I don't understand. I can't explain to you why, because they both have the same text. But it just feels to me that when I'm able to evolve a Steel Feather, it's just like multiple evolutions in the same turn that I have access to. I'm just trying to think about like why that is, and I can't like put it into words. I guess it's because like usually if the Mechwing lives, it's because you had other things in play as well that took priority. So like maybe you had like other small things, whereas like Shadow Steel having 3 health, like it's rarely able to attack into something and then evolve. Usually you have to suicide it if you want it to attack into something. Whereas Mechwing can like bump into something, chip away at it, evolve, and like continue to do its thing, I suppose. I think that's enough about that though. I don't want to go too deep into this. Now, Zappy, who evolves into Electrosaur, they're both whack. Put them in C tier. Not gonna go too deep into it. It's just like, it's the same issue that the Thunderpur gets. I guess we'll put them right next to each other. Maybe Zappy is even better than Thunderpur, like slightly, but like it's not a huge deal. They're just, I think the Zap mechanic needs a bit of love. I just don't think it does quite what it needs to be doing at the moment. It's like almost there, but because it's a coin flip if it hits what you need it to hit, or a dice roll, it's just so inconsistent that it just can't cross the finish line, I feel like. Glowbug. I mean, Glowbug is really bad. I don't see it. Oh, here we go. Glowbug, Angeloon, and Divinifly. Let's see. Glowbug, 1 mana, 1/1, no ability, trash. Angeloon, 0 mana, or 3 mana, 0/8, no ability, also trash. Evolves into Divinifly, the big payoff you worked for. Your 6 mana, 8/8 Bless. So potentially an 11/8 for 6 mana. Wow, that's incredible. It gets whirlwinded. D tier. Dark Shell and Dreadspike. Dark Shell and Dreadspike are like, I've played them a couple times. I think they're like I guess they're C tier. But I feel like they're like slightly better than C tier. They don't deserve to be in C. They don't deserve to be in B tier. They don't. We're gonna put them in C tier. It doesn't deserve to go up one. But like, if there was something in between C and B tier, I think Dreadspike deserves to be in there. I feel like the Dreadspike evolution is better than like all the other cards that we have in C tier, but it just doesn't deserve to make it into B tier. It's just not good enough. Dreadspike itself is just so outclassed by Woofa, and then like, yeah, just straight up, just the whole evolution line, Dreadspike and Darkshell, they're just completely outclassed by Woofa into like Boopasnoot, Woofa, and Gnarler. Yeah, I think we've said enough here. Gearzerker and Gearwalla, I think they're called. Or Gearwalla. Where are these guys? This one I don't fully remember. I know they have like Rampage or whatever, Berserker it's called. Let's see if we can search it. Yeah, Gerwal and Gearzerker. 3 mana 4/4 Berserker. You know, there's a card called Cutie Bug that comes down on turn 2 and will kill Gearwall before it gets to activate Berserker. And then there's a card called Ocho that will, or even forget Ocho, there's a card called Firon that costs 3 mana that will throw a fireball at Gearzerker and kill it for free while leaving a 4/4 in play. So basically, Firon will kill Gearzerker and leave a Garwall in play. Because Gerwal's Berserker effect is worthless. This card, this effect does nothing. Because this card expects you to survive damage. But 4 health is so little that it's so rarely going to survive damage. And even if it does survive damage, who cares? Your opponent can... Like, let's say you're living the dream. Your Gerwal... Dude, I'm trying to even, like, think. Your Gerwal... You played a Gerwal, and it attacked into something with 3 health. Or something with 3 power, and it lived. I can't even think of what card it came down, and it attacked into a Boopasnoot, and it lived. Right? The other half of the Boopasnoot's gonna kill it. It costs 1 mana. Like, it's just a terrible deal. So for that reason, I'm out. For that reason, I'm out. These guys honestly might even be D tier. They're just terrible. Siora, Dracora, and the third one, I forget its name. Neptoria. Siora is a 1 mana 2/2 rush. Siora is not a very good card. The good thing about Siora is it's like... So in this game, when you look at the 1-drops that are playable, it's like... It's Boopasnoot and it's Aquafluffle. And those are basically the only 2 playable 1-drops. And then it takes a tier down. And then it's Baba and Siora are like the other good 1-drops in the game. So even though Siora isn't actually good on its own, it like fulfills this niche where it's like a playable 1-drop that actually has a really good evolution. Going into Dracora is actually like... Dracora is the all-star of this evolution line. 3 mana 5/5 Vortex. That stat line is pretty solid. 3 mana for a 5/5 is great. 3 mana is also like the sweet spot of how much mana you're willing to pay on Vortex. I don't think you're really willing to pay much more than 3 mana for Vortex on most occasions. And then Neptoria is like kind of the dud of the 3. Like, you're never gonna hardcast this guy for 7. But like in an aggressive deck, like it could be worth having like 1 Neptoria that you can go into from Dracora. I think oftentimes decks that play Dracora will just play the Siora and the Dracora. Like, you don't need to go into the Neptoria. But it's like the same way that we said for Peba not holding back the rest of the evolution line. I feel like Neptoria doesn't hold back the rest of the evolution line, and it is an option that you could go into. And like, even if you don't play it in your deck, the sheer fact that you have like a Dracora in play, maybe your opponent will have to be a little concerned that like maybe they can Shadow Steal the Dracora, search out a Neptoria, and Hydroblast something. I think it's not super common that happens, but long story short, B tier. These guys are good. Probably weaker than... Yeah, I think around here seems good. Okay, Stoneclaw and Rockclaw. I really like these guys. Stoneclaw, while it is a little weak to Whirlwind, it is a good deal. This card is often coming down with 12 or 15 health, which means it will often evolve if it doesn't get Whirlwinded. And its evolution is really good. Rockclaw is excellent. This is an evolution line that, like, it knows it gets its job and it fulfills it. Because Stoneclaw gets better when your opponent has a wide board. And Rockclaw, similarly, gets better when your opponent has a wide board. And they function together. Because Stoneclaw can attack into something, it'll live. It can attack into something and soften it up for Earthquake, and it'll live. And then you can evolve it to get the 1-mana Earthquake. And a 1-mana Earthquake is a crazy deal. And then Rockclaw just has so much health that it can survive 2 Earthquakes on its own as well. So in conjunction with, like, other Earthquakes, in the right deck, Stoneclaw and Rockclaw are just both excellent. I'm going to say this is an A tier evolution. Maybe even, like, high A tier. Let's see. Ponteria and Sylvania. I think these guys are pretty bad. I've never seen... Actually, that's not true. I was going to say I've never seen anyone play Sylvania, but I think I have seen this card played before. But it's just, like... It's kind of garbage, dude. Like, it gets Whirlwinded. It gets Hydroblasted. 3 mana, 3/4 just isn't a good deal. I'm not looking to pay 7 mana for any kind of top-end card. There's, like, I'm not excited to play either of these cards ever. And I guess that's just as far as this goes. Aquafluffle and Hydromane? Are these guys A tier? These guys might be A tier. I so rarely... Every time I use Aquafluffle, I very rarely get value out of Hydromane. But that doesn't mean Hydromane is bad. Aquafluffle is excellent. And just having the option, even if you never use it, even if in most games you never use the Hydromane for its effect, the fact that your 1-mana 2/2 Aegis can bump into something and then evolve into Hydromane, turn into a 5/4, that's decent enough. It's, like, not insane, but it's good enough. And then on top of it, it's just this upside that, like, you could just search out... You could play Aquafluffle, you can search out the, with the Windseeker, and you can get the evolution into Hydromane. Like, its existence on board will threaten your opponent, if that makes sense. And it's one of the only quality... Hydromane is one of the only quality Hydroblast cards that you can Windseek out. And for that reason, I think it is one of the best Hydroblast cards in the game. The only one that's considerably better would be Jelly. And I'm not entirely sure I'm convinced that Jelly Jello is better than Aquafluffle Hydromane. I think Aquafluffle Hydromane might just be better, because Aquafluffle itself is just such an excellent card. Rot Petal. Rot Petal and Witherbloom. 2 mana 1/1 Soul Reaper evolves into 5 mana 5/5 Soul Reaper. These cards aren't good. A really awkward part about these Soul Reaper evolution cards is that, let's say you have a Rot Petal, and it's seen 6 things die, and it's a 7/7. Even if you were to, like, there's a world where you can evolve it into Witherbloom, and that's great, but it downgrades itself, because it goes from being this big unit to actually getting smaller, which is just really, really a tricky spot to be in for this Rot Petal. So I think, is this D tier? I feel bad putting it in D tier, but I think it is. It's just not good. Cutie Bug and Cutie Pillar. B tier. I love Cutie Pillar. Cutie Bug is awesome also. Cutie Bug is the star of the show between the two of them. But I really like that Cutie Pillar is such a cheap Life Plume card. And even though right now Cutie Pillar doesn't see much play, I am optimistic that one day Cutie Pillar will get like enough support that you can use it along. Like, Cutie Pillar is the best enabler for Hydroblast in the game because it's so cheap. And then it evolves into Cutie Bug, which enables another Hydroblast. Like, that's just such a cool combo. The issue is that there's other Life Bloom cards that kind of fulfill the same role. Like the Pandorable, basically. But the problem with Pandorable, right? Like, the Pandorable has the 1 mana 1/2, and then it goes into 6/6. But the Cutie Bug being a 2 mana 4/5 is just such a good deal that like it's the Cutie Bug is the best of all the Life Bloom cards, I feel like, except for like maybe you could argue Enchi is better because it's got more health. I think it's overall got a bigger stat line, right? Because Enchi is a 3/3. Yeah, so Enchi has 1 more stat point total. But the Cutie Bug, I just feel like trades so well. Excuse me, I'm coming down from some kind of cold still. Let's see. Voldrake and Voldragon. Voldrake is like almost playable, being it's just that Zap needs love, dude. If Zap gets a little bit of love, Voldrake is really solid. But then it's like Voldragon is like, I don't want to pay 9 mana for this, bro. Do you want to pay 9 mana for this? I don't want to pay 9 mana for this. So I'm gonna say these are C tier. Let's see who's up next. Massa and Moss Grudge. These guys are probably C tier. Moss Grudge is just one of the similar to Smacky, but like suffers even more. It's just that like even if you get to evolve this guy, it's gonna get Hydroblast, it's gonna get Whirlwinded, so it's just not worth the effort. And it's not like Massa is like such a good card on its own either. Massa is not very good. So we'll say these are C tier. Wormy and Draconix. This evolution line kills me. I wish Wormy was better. I wish it was better, or I wish their abilities were flipped. That Wormy was the Windseeker and Draconix was the guard. Like, it's just so close to playable, but it's just so clunky. Every time I've tried playing these cards, I'm just so disappointed. I really wish these cards were just better than they are, but they're just not. These guys, I don't even think I can put them in C tier, dude. I think they are D tier. I'm gonna put them in C tier just because I want them to be good, dude. They're just not. So I'm gonna put them in C tier. Snow Cub going into Ice Maw. Snow Cub is like almost good. It's got a lot of stats for its mana cost. Snow Cub is one of the best provoke units in the game. The problem is provoke units all suck. So even though, at least at the current moment, like these provoke units just aren't good enough. Just because they're all understated, or like, it's a provoke unit, so it's supposed to block things, but it's going to get whirlwinded, so it doesn't do its job, and it ends up actually hurting you instead of helping you. It doesn't stabilize you, it actually makes you lose the board. Just the way that these provoke units work. It's like, provoke and guard, they're both undercosted, and like, they need to like work together, but instead they're separate mechanics. There's just like a disconnect there. And on top of it, they're just understated as well. So it's just like, I'll put him in C tier as well. He's not like completely unplayable like these no effect cards. I've tried using the Snow Cub before. There was a tournament today that I did play Snow Cub in. I lost on the first round, so that gives you an idea of how unuseful these cards are, how useless or detrimental to your game plan these cards are, especially in a world with whirlwinds. Like, when I queued that deck this morning, I knew it wasn't going to work. I just wanted to try it. And it just didn't work. It is what it is. Let's see. Who do we got next? We got Dreadfur and Necrobear up next. Dreadfur I don't think is particularly good. I have seen Necrobear played to a little bit of success in some of the Singleton events sometimes. I know Rain has used that card a few times. I've been impressed every time I play against it, especially because in Singleton, I very rarely play the, in Singleton formats, I very rarely play Hydroblast. So I feel like the Necrobear is actually quite solid there. Let's see, who do we have next? We have Umbracon and Umbranix. I guess they're like C tier. They're like, they go near, I guess they go like in between these guys. It's just like, it's the same as we've said before. It's just like these Psybeam cards are like so situationally useful and so awkward. The evolution going from Umbranix into Umbracon is pretty solid, especially if your opponent like doesn't have a Whirlwind or they don't have a Hydroblast, but like most of the time they're gonna have it. So they're just going to be able to answer it. So you're working really hard to like get questionable value. Glidefin, Galefin, and Swooshark. Galefin is the star of the show out of these. Galefin is the best of them all. But Galefin is still understated. It's not a 6/6 for 4. The good thing about this is if we look at Air, Air basically has no 2-drops. They have Eagleon. They have Dracby, which doesn't count as an evolution. They have Robofly, which has no effect, so it also doesn't count as an evolution. They just don't... Air doesn't have things to play in the early turns. So Glidefin, even though it's not good, Glidefin is one of the few cards you could play in that 2-mana slot. And for that reason, it's like, it's still solid. I think it still doesn't go much higher than C tier, though. Maybe like around here or something. We'll bump him up one. Oh, here he is. Here he is, the boy. The boy himself. Big dog. Big dog. Y'all see that meme with Tiger Woods where he's like, big dog? Because that's what this is right here. Hoopasnoot, Woofa, and Gnarler. Cracked evolution line. Boopasnoot and Woofa, insane. My favorite evolution line in the game, going from Boopasnoot into Woofa. Absolutely excellent. And you don't have to go into Gnarler in your deck. You could just not play Gnarler. But when you do play Gnarler, like, that one of Gnarler in the decks that can make use of it, dude, the Gnarler is cracked, bro. It's so big. It's got Aegis. It's a 6-mana 8/8. This card is threatening, dude. If they don't have Hydroblast, if they don't have Whirlwind, this Gnarler will chew them up. S tier. Better than Grumble. Yeah. Where is he? Virulafly. We're up to the Virulaflies. We just saw them a minute ago. Now I don't see them. Oh, here they are. Verilet, Verfury. Verilet and Verfury. So it's a 1-mana 1/1 that evolves into a 3-mana 3/3 with Whirlwind. I have seen people play the 3-mana 3/3 with Whirlwind, but they only play it so that they can have... Like, the only time people play the Verfury is when they already have 2 copies of Eagleon, 2 copies of Mechwing, 2 copies of Mechafly, and they're still like, I want more Whirlwinds, because Whirlwind is just so powerful. That's the only time people play these cards. It's not like the cards themselves are actually good, it's just that people want another Verfury. Or they want another 3-mana Whirlwind. So we're just going to put them in C tier. They're not very good. And now we're going to put them in D tier. You're never going to evolve this. You're never going to go Verilet into Verfury. You're going to just play Verfury by itself. So we're just not going to count that as an evolution line. Let's see. Lidacia. We've gone through quite a few of these already. We have Lidacia up next. Where is Lidacia? Here we go. Lidacia evolves into Dizel. And there are a couple evolutions that do this. Wormy does this also, where it's a light unit that evolves into a dark, whereas Wormy is a normal that evolves into an air, which I think is like really cool. Even here, Jelly evolves into Jellord, which is a dark. I think that's a cool. It's cool design space, but it's not particularly relevant design space, I suppose. Ladesha is good. Dizelle isn't very good. You're basically never gonna play Dizelle. I think I have tried playing a deck with Ladesha and Dizelle in it once before, and I basically never evolved the Dizelle because you want Ladesha to die, right? Like, the point of Ladesha is to die and to retribute the board, and you're just never going to get to evolve it. So I'll say they're C tier just because Ladesha is really good. You're never actually going to evolve it into Dizelle, but like, in theory, if you were to go Ladesha and Dizelle, it could be good sometimes, especially if your opponent's like, well, I'm not going to commit much to the board because I don't want to give my board up to the Ladesha, and then you evolve it into a like, they go tall, and then you evolve it into Dizelle, and Dizelle can kind of stuff what they got going on. Like, in theory, it could be decent, but it's just not great. I'll put them in the middle. You're better than those. You're better than... There you go. That seems reasonable. Jelly, Jello, and Jellord. Jelly, Jello, and Jellord are all really solid. I've played all three of them in a few decks before. Jellord is a little awkward because he dies to Hydroblast himself. So in a world where there is a lot of Hydroblast going around, you probably don't want to go into the third one. You don't want to finish the evolution up. But the first two are really good, and I really like the art. Not that that matters. But, yeah, I think these are... While Aquafluffle is the best card to play to search for an evolution, Jelly is like two good Hydroblasts that you can go into. And I really like being able to kind of like climb, if that makes sense, where you can like go Cutie Pillar, Jelly on one turn. And then on the next turn, you evolve Cutie Bug, Jello. And it's like they climb together, if that makes sense. I think it makes sense. They go up that evolution chain together. So it is actually quite a solid evolution line. I would say B tier, high B tier. I think makes sense. And we're gonna put these two together because they're best friends. I love Jelly. Cutie Bug and here, there we go. They're best friends, dude. That is what it is. Guans going into Gua King. Guans is an excellent card. You're not super often going to evolve it into Gua King. I have evolved Guans to Gua King on a handful of times, quite a few times. It's just not something that you do like super often. But it is a decent way to kind of like, if you don't have value in the retribution on that particular turn, you can evolve it, get something a little stronger, and draw a new card. It's good. It's good. I would say high B tier. I really like the Gua King. It is weak to Whirlwind. Both these two cards are weak to Whirlwind is the main issue, which is kind of... Whirlwind kind of like just keeps so many cards out of the metagame. They're just not allowed to play because Whirlwind just stuffs them way too hard. Psymist and Psynami. Psymist and Psynami are like Barry and Nippa, except terrible. And this is actually a great example. I said one of the things that was really good about Nippa is that it evolves into Barry, which they're both very aggressive. So even though both cards are understated for what they're doing, the evolution line is so in sync with each other that they work well together. Whereas it's basically the exact opposite for Psymist and Psynami. Psymist is an aggressive card, and Psynami is a defensive card. And they don't work together. There's just... Yeah, that's just the reality. You don't get any of the benefit. Like, you take the risk playing this 2-mana 3/3 Vortex, which isn't a good stat line, to get what? To get a big defensive card? They don't work together. And for that reason, C tier. And I'm not going to get too... Like, we've already said this, I'm not going to get too detailed in, like, cleaning up these orders. These two suck. I forget their names. The Mud guys. Mudrix or something like that. I think they're near the top. Let me see. Yeah. Mudrix and Mudrixis. 2-mana, 2/1 provoke. Oh boy. What a terrible deal. And then you get a 4-mana 4/4 Provoke. Put it in the dumpster right where it belongs. Frosthog and Isoquine. 2-mana 2/1 Rush isn't good. 4-mana 5/3 Blizzard isn't good, but like they're like about the same power level as these guys. So I guess we could like put them next to each other. They're like comparable. They're just not good, but they are comparable. Let's see, Infernobot or Pyrobot and Infernobot. 2-mana 2/2 Rush, which evolves into 6-mana 7/7 Inferno. You're basically never gonna evolve this thing. 2-mana 2/2 is just so bad that it's just gonna get stuffed by everything. But I mean, 6-mana 7/7 Inferno is playable at the very least. So C tier is where it'll go. These guys over here, Saboteur and Saberbane, no ability cards. You know where they belong. Right over here. Krababa and Crabominable. Oh no, Krababa and Claw King. Why did I think it? I think Crabominable is a Pokemon. I think that's the second time I've gotten a card confused with Pokemon. You know, Krababa is like not bad. 3-mana 4/5 Vortex is like, we were talking about the 3-mana 5/5 earlier. Dracora, and I think Dracora is like the prime example of what you want on a Vortex card. It's overstated for its mana cost, and it has a good and it's efficient. Just that's the reality of it. Krababa is a little bit less efficient, and Krababa evolves into Claw King, which is a 7-mana 6/7 Vortex that you're basically never gonna want to pay 7 mana to get online. That's kind of why we held Soul Swimmer back earlier as well. You just don't want to pay that high mana cost. That's also why Aquavia, the Water Angel, that's why this is the weakest angel in the game. Because you don't want to spend 5 mana on a Vortex. It's just too expensive. So, I think Krababa is like almost playable, but it's just really not that playable. It's like you're scraping the bottom of the barrel when you're already playing it. And then the Claw King is just like not very good. So we'll say they're like, it's got to be better than Sainami, dude. He's better than this one, but like, oh, Monkey, boom, bam, pop, pow, Monkey's cracked. Every single part of this every single part of this evolution chain is insane. You would be happy to have 2 copies of each of these cards in almost every single deck you can play. Monkey, 2-mana 4/4 Rush, excellent. Uga, 4-mana 6/6 Rush, excellent. Uga Chief, 6-mana 8/8 Rush, excellent. And you know what? The more Rush units you have in a deck, the more aggressive your deck becomes. So Rush combos with itself. So the more Rush, the more you would play a whole deck of only these cards if you could, because they're so good. You would play literally just monkeys with some Shadow Steels thrown in there just to combo off a little bit. Like, it's so good. And yeah, S tier. Potentially even better than Shadow Steel, but I think Shadow Steel fulfills a unique role that none of these other evolution cards can do, because Shadow Steel enables all of this. Shadow Steel is the only card in the game that enables this entire tier list to do what it's supposed to do. Let's see who we're up to next. Drakbat and Drakby. Oh, cool. We're right next to him. 2-mana 2/2, no ability. 4-mana 4/4, no ability. 5-mana 6/7 Whirlwind. So that's the payoff. 5-mana 6/7 Whirlwind. Well, you know where else we have a 5-mana 6/7 Whirlwind? We have Mechadrone. And Mechadrone evolves from Mechafly, which is way better. So these guys, I'm going to say D tier, because really, you wouldn't play it for the evolution line. And you would never, the first 2 cards never matter. It's literally the 5-drop that's the only one that's worth considering playing. And the other 2 are garbage. So we'll say it's a D tier evolution, even though maybe it's a little mean. I think it's reasonable. Solar Moo. Where is the cow? Here it is, right next to where we were. 4-mana 4/6 Bless, so it's like a 4-mana 7/6, which is like, it's not bad. And then it evolves into Glory Bowl, but they're not good. I've never seen anyone play this card seriously. somewhere in C tier it goes. Probably better than this, but like not very good. Tentacutie, 2-mana 3/3 rush, evolves into Krakapus, which is a 5-mana 7/5 vortex, and evolves into another big vortex unit. I think out of all the vortex cards, this is probably one of the weakest of all the evolutions. And it's actually so funny, because if you were to take Tentacutie and Krakapus and flip their text, so you give Krakapus Rush and you give Tentacutie Vortex, this would be an insane evolution line. But because that's not the reality, and because that's just not how it works, these guys just really aren't very good. We're gonna say they're C tier. And C tier is really getting pretty thick now. I think there really is a big divide between like what's good in this game and what's just kind of chaff, for sure. Speaking of chaff, Turdy, D tier. Go next. Leafy and Eleleaf. So we put Pandorable in A tier. I think Leafy and Eleleaf are like B tier. I don't think they're so bad that they're C tier. I've played this combo a few times. Eleleaf is not a card you're happy to play, but in the type of decks that are interested in Eleleaf, it's like, or I guess the decks are interested in Leafy. They're not interested in Eleleaf. They're just interested in the cheap Life Bloom that they can play. And then the Eleleaf is just like something they can evolve into. So it's not that you play it because it's good. You play it because you can evolve it and just cycle and get use out of your Shadow Steals is the main thing. And hopefully you don't draw it when it's awkward, because the Eleleaf, when it's awkward, it's just like it's worthless. The card sucks. But it is good. Like these guys are solid utility for their cost, for sure. Who do we have next? I mean, Ice Cubes. I mean, these cards you never actually play. They go D tier. The Bugtra goes D tier. The Nordy goes D tier. And then we have Cactobud, Cactosaurus, and Cactolord next. And because we're looking at this from the perspective of the evolution line, Cactosaurus is the only playable one, and the rest of the line sucks. So I'll say C tier just to be nice to it, because Cactosaurus just kind of hard carries the rest of them. And then let's see, who do we have next? Oh, Troll Rock and Trolley. These guys are S tier. Right? Are these guys S tier? Are they better than Stona and Peba? I don't know. I don't know if they're better. I'm gonna say they are better, but I'm not 100% certain that's the case. I think it is better, and I'll tell you why I think it's better. When you evolve from Stona into Raka, you go from a 2/4 into a 4/5, which is +2 +1. Whereas when you go Trolley into Troll Rock, you go +3 +3 on your unit. So the upside is just way higher. You get way more stats for your efforts. And for that reason, I think this evolution line just slightly edges out the Peba evolution line. And then on top of it, you know what? Let's be reasonable. Peba does hold this evolution line back to some extent, because if we're looking at the entirety of the evolution line, Peba is just useless. But Raka and Stona are just so good that I think it's worth... I think you can justify ignoring Peba even existing. And we did that for like one other card as well. I can't remember which one we did it for, but yeah. Glaciabeak and Glaciador. 1 mana 2/2 with no ability, evolves into a 4 mana 4/5. Unfortunately, this evolution line is just outclassed now by the Snowbeak. I'm gonna say this is D tier. I feel like it's a little mean put them in D tier, but like, I don't think they're C tier. I don't think they deserve it. Robofly? Or Mechafly, Mechadrone, rather. It's similar to Peba. You never play the Peba, you never play the Robofly, but Mechafly and Mechadrone, these two work so well together. Mechadrone itself is just, at 5 mana, is a playable card. Like, you're happy to spend 5 mana on this effect. Or for this card, especially, like, 5 mana 6/7 is one of the hardest. It's very hard to actually profitably deal with this card. There are very few cards that will answer this. Even like even this one, right? Yeah, Sandstalker is like the only card in the game that actually answers the Mechadrone profitably. It's very unique in that sense. Yeah, I think these guys are S tier. I think they're like high S tier as well. Maybe like here. Bunnytron. Is that what it's even called? Is it Bunnytron? Bunotron. And it evolves into Rabbitron. I mean, these guys just suck. Get them out of here. Sugmagoo. Get them out of here. Snowcub. Get them out of here. I think we're just pretty much only left with Chaff now. Limpy is not good. Mudrides, I think this guy's name is. Does this guy even have an effect? Mudra is a 4-mana 4/4. Evolves to 6 mana 5/8. I mean, it's just, you'd never play the first one. And it's the same for the Flamer. It's 4 mana 4/4. You just never play it. It's just a lot of chaff. Enchi and Chakra and Enpaw. Really solid line. Really solid evolution line, I would say. Now, oftentimes when I play the Enchis and the Enpaws, I play 2 Enchi, 1 Enpaw. I usually don't go any further than that. But you could if you wanted to. I just don't necessarily think it's worth it. But I think Enchi into Enpaw alone is really solid. And then there could be upside for playing the rest. So I would say these guys are at least B tier. Probably higher. Probably like bottom of A tier, I would say. I think this one, the Pandorable, is better than the Enchi, but like it's close. Let's see. Roglet, Roglet, and Rajorcer. I think you're basically never evolving these guys. If you're playing any of them, you're playing the Rajorcer. I have seen people play Roglet and Roglet. I think that's a mistake personally. I think you just are interested in Rajorcer if you do play these guys. So I would say that this is a D tier evolution line, but we'll be a little nicer and we'll say we'll be nicer. We'll say it's a C tier evolution line. We'll say it's even high C tier. Go. We have Trebby, Treadyear, and Treeguard. Trebby is terrible. Treadyear is terrible. Treeguard is the only good one of the 3. Treeguard is actually a quite good card, but since we're looking at the entire evolution line, we'll say this is C tier. Middle of C tier. Right about there. Scorpio has no effect. This thing has no effect. I don't even know its name. And then, alright, we're up to our last 2 cards. We have Fenny, or Fenki, something like that. Fenny, Foxassassin, and Sandstalker. Fenny is a little weak. Foxassassin and Sandstalker. Sandstalker is really good. And then Foxassassin is, like, okay enough. It's worse than Rajorcer. So, like, me, usually, when I'm playing a deck with Rajorcer, I'm playing Rajorcer and Sandstalker. I'm not playing Foxassassin. Just because I'm interested in the most possible damage, because you can never expect Rajorcer to live, right? If you play Rajorcer, if you're an aggressive deck and you play Rajorcer and he survives and he gets to attack a second time, you probably already won the game. So you're never going to get to evolve the Foxassassin into a Sandstalker, because if you did, you were already winning. So to me, I just value the 1 extra point of power over the Foxassassin. So I would say you wouldn't want to play these as an evolution line. But in a vacuum, if you forget that Rajorcer even existed, Foxassassin into Sandstalker is actually pretty decent. Fenny, not so much. I would say these would be like C tier. You could even argue it's B tier. You know what? I'm going to put it next to the Pegasol. We'll drop this down. We'll put them both B tier. I think the Pegasi and the Pegasol, if we put those here, I think we can also argue that Fox Assassin belongs to be there, or deserves to be there. And then finally we have Lumi, Lumino, and Luminix. Lumi is a really good 2-drop. It's a 2-mana 8/4, which is like ludicrous. That is so much stats for 2 mana. It's unreal. Lumino, not so great. And then Luminix is just like, you would never actually want to play Luminix. But if you do somehow get to go up that chain, it is like a pretty decent chain. Is it B tier or is it C tier? I'm feeling generous. We'll put it in B tier. This evolution line has to be better than this thing, right? And I think that's our tier list. We're not going to go into detail of of like making sure C tier is like in perfect order. Oh my goodness. Like, we're not going to do that. That's a waste of time. I'm not even going to bother with like A tier or S tier either, because really this whole thing is just like opinions anyway. It's not factual. It's just like my thought process going over these cards. So I don't think it's worth stressing it. I think you can like make a lot of arguments that like maybe this should be C tier, maybe this should be like, I don't know, maybe something should be A tier. Like I don't know, like here. Like you could move them around. Like it's not guaranteed to be proper. But this is, I think, a pretty good starting point, at least in my opinion. I would say if you're looking to play some evolutions, and you should be looking to play evolutions in ChampionsTCG. For sure, you should be looking to play evolutions in the game, because that's where you get your edge in a lot of games, is by evolving and generating a tempo advantage. And a card advantage as well by evolving. I think this is a good place to look at some of the cards you might want to look at first when building your deck, at the very least. When you're thinking about the evolution lines you want to consider when you're playing, this is a good place to look. And with that said, I bid thee all farewell. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching this far, and I will see you all later.